Welcome, one and all. I come bearing a gift. A hot and spicy, yet also ice-cool gift. That's right, it can only be yet another Kings of War tournament report, this time from Clash at Kingston 5. And just to add a little bit of ice-cool spiciness to the proceedings, I think I shall appear in the corner of your screen right about now. Hello there. So I'm armed with 3 different army lists here in my hand, and you may think, well, that's sheer insanity. No tournament could justify making you bring along 3 different armies. Well, Clash at Kingston 5 decided to give it a go. So, while you look at this little image from Game 1, I'll give you the rundown on Clash at Kingston 5. So, 3 different point levels, 4 games, 1 day. So the first 2 games are at 1,000 points. The third game is at 1,800 points, and the fourth game is at 2,500 points. You have more time, obviously, for the bigger games, and there were certain list building restrictions as well. No allies allowed in any of the lists. So that's something I approve of, I think. I'm not a huge fan of allies in general. And there was also a limit on living legends. In the lower lists, in the 1000 list you couldn't take any living legend units, and in the 1800 list you could only take 1. So that also added a bit of extra selection spice to the proceedings. Now, if anyone is watching this live, feel free to let me know, and I will refer to the chat occasionally, which I have looking at me in the corner of the screen there. So, first of all, you may notice that this 1000 point game here, which is game 1, is on quite a large table for such a small game. It's 6x4, the regulation size. However, I was practicing for this. Well, the one practice game I did at this point level was on 4x4, and that's usually the table size that you would go for at this level. But at this event, 6x4 it was for 1,000 points. And this particular scenario is push in game 1, and you can see that I've come up against some rather fiendish looking abyssal dwarves on the opposite side of the table there. So to take through my list, let's just have a look from this side here. So we have a troop of Fleabag Rider Sniffs, we have the Mincer, we have a horde of trolls there. That particular horde does not have any upgrades. These pictures were taken before we put our push tokens on any of our units, by the way. Then further along we have 2 more troll hordes. The one on the right of this picture here has a dead elf on its base, which represents the Dwarven Ale, which is the standard upgrade that you'll always see in pretty much any of my goblin lists on the trolls. There is a flagget between them with the Diadem of Dragonkind, very, very useful. A war trombone, also very useful. And out there we have another troop of Fleabag Rider Sniffs. So, you remember at a recent tournament that was 1,250 points. That word didn't come out very well. So, it was quite similar to this list that I've got here, but I also had a Troll Bruiser, and the Fleabag Rider Sniffs were in larger units. So obviously they had to be ditched because this is only 1,000 points, but it's quite similar, and that list went very well if you recall. So I'm trying something similar for games 1 and 2 here. And here's what I'm up against. So there is some gargoyles, there is a horde of lesser obsidian golems. There is another horde, except when this picture was taken, one of them was actually being superglued back onto its base. So it only looks like it's a regiment there, but it is actually a horde. The rest of them will be joining in shortly. And behind the tree to the left of them, you can see something big and juicy. That is the greater golem. Then there is an iron caster behind him. And on the right, there is a heavy mortar and the Dragonfire team, are they called? The little breath weapon that's going to be running around performing a very similar job to my war trombone. So I'll put the lists down for a second. Still waiting for the first live comment on this, by the way. Okay, so I put my push tokens, both of them, onto the Mincer. And if you saw the wide shots at the beginning, which I will refer back to now, then you'll see that the Mincer is fairly unopposed there. I think I had slightly more drops than my opponent, and the way it looked like he was setting up was very, very focused over to the left as I'm looking at it, so I thought I'll stick the Mincer over on the right. It's fairly cheap, the Mincer, I could probably do okay without it. So if I could just let that run off into enemy territory with the push tokens, then that'd be a nice, handy thing to be able to do. And then focus everything else on the center where the valuable token is sitting in the middle there, because that could be a bit of a tiebreaker. And Jonathan has joined in, looking for tips from the Goblin Master. Yes, you may well call me the Goblin Master. And so, what else have I got in mind tactically here? So the ranged output of the Abyssal Dwarves is pretty squarely on that mortar. The Dragonfire team I'm not overly concerned with because it's only one and it's not quite as good as a War Trombone, and I think I should be able to try and shoot that off from a distance with my sniff troops if I get the opportunity. So I've put them, I think I've put one of them in a position where the mortar was never going to be able to see it when I was deploying. I don't want the mortar to land on any of my more fragile units. If it's going to land on anything, it sounds weird, but I'd probably rather it hit one of my big expensive troll units because they're far less likely to die from it and they can regenerate the wounds back, and it's only the one mortar. So as long as it doesn't happen at a really inopportune moment. And we have a gorilla in the chat as well, apparently. So, the mincer is going to be mincing down the right-hand side of the battlefield, and my opponent is going to be putting both of the push tokens on this unit here, which is on the left as I look at it, the obsidian golems. So I've actually got a unit that can quite happily hold on to those tokens and not worry if it doesn't really get involved in the fight, whereas my opponent does not have that luxury. So he may have a dilemma at some point. Does he actually thrust these obsidian golems into battle, or does he just continue heading for the promised land of my half of the table and just camping in there and surviving? So turn one. And looks like my opponent is going first here. You can see a little bit of movement there, but not a huge amount. The gargoyles have moved up behind the hill there. And immediately, as soon as they were moved, I thought, are they really that safe? Because I've got a troop of sniffs down there who could potentially shoot them. And all I would need to do is waver them, and that kind of annoys them. I can just tie them up with my sniffs for the whole game. That would be fine by me, because they're the one really long-range threat that could, if I'm looking to set up multi-charges, thrust itself in there and prevent me from doing so. And there's a bit of an advance with the golems here are the ones carrying the push tokens, so you'd expect them to move up. Everyone else is kind of surrounding the centre and not advancing out of the difficult terrain at this stage. And that's how it looks at the end of that turn. Nothing achieved, the mortar does not hit. And Goblin turn one. So immediately the mincer is just heading up down that side. He's not going full speed ahead, if I recall, because he might have done in this turn, but in general I'm not going to be going full speed ahead because there is still a bit of enemy ranged threat around there. There's that breath weapon, and I'd rather not let that have a go at the mincer, because if the mincer takes any damage at all, it's just heading straight to Waver Town or Removalsville. Should have probably called it Routeville, not Removalsville. And here in the centre you can see trolls have advanced, and that central token is going to be very, very important, because it looks like we're not going to pose too much of a threat to each other's flanking push token carrying forces. So whoever gets this central objective could be the one that takes the game here. So I'm putting all my trolls heading in there with the two breath weapons as backup. And you may recall at a recent tournament when I was playing Rordia, I came up against two Abyssal Dwarf lists that had a lot of golems in them. And I really struggled to crack through that defense, especially when they're being healed. But this list I've got here is just full of crushing strength. 3 troll hordes, and the mincer as well, which can also provide a bit of punch, and there is piercing on the war trombone as well. So the sniffs over on the left, they do exactly what I wanted them to do, but they do it too well because they kill the gargoyles. So I wasn't planning to actually kill them in one round, I was just hoping to plink a bit of damage on them and possibly waver them in the first attempt, but they're actually dead. So that means that the sniffs are going to be able to get involved in the game now. The enemy has lost their only real piece of chaff, and had a very tasty start there. On to turn 2 for the Abyssal Dwarves. So they are actually moving forward now, somewhat within charge range. And there's a it's arguable whether it's a mistake of positioning the unit intentionally or whether it's a mistake of not checking exactly where the unit was. Because the dragon-fired breath weapon has got in range to fire its weapon at my trolls, but it's also positioned himself in range to be charged by my trolls, whereas the lesser golems have not put themselves in range to be charged. And any other unit that's not an individual, you would think, okay, that's fairly safe because there's no room for a unit to charge and actually fit in that crevice. But there is going to be space for the trolls, should they survive whatever's coming their way shooting-wise here. There is going to be space for them to charge that individual, who would then align to them, and then they would have the opportunity of an overrun into the golems. The gorilla is liking the troop of sniffs. Yep, they are pretty tasty. I generally think they're a bit on the fragile side compared to the regiments, but they are cheaper as well. So there's definitely a debate to be had on which is superior. So everything has come forward a bit here. The greater golem, I believe, is in range of at least one of these hordes of trolls. I think he made sure that I couldn't double charge anything. And these trolls, I made sure to put the Dwarven Ale unit in the position where they were going to take the brunt of any kind of ranged flamey attack here. I think there's also a breath attack on the obsidian golems here as well. I think they may have the Diadem of Dragonkind on that unit, so they might have helped out here as well. And I think they were able to get to within range to use their weapon, but out of charge range because of the positioning of the leader points and the way the units were tilted. I think that is how that works. It is possible to do that. To be within range, for you to attack even if you've got exactly the same range as your opponent and still be out of their range. Because if it's being measured from the leader point, then it is possible to do that. But it's not enough to even waver that unit, the ranged assault there. And there's a few things set up here. You can see that the push token carrying golems have turned inwards towards the centre now, so they are posing a little bit of a threat there. They're not going to be in charge range, and there is a surge of 8 available to them from the Ironcaster, so I'm going to keep that in mind whenever I move any of my units. I want to make sure that if I'm going to be within range for the surge, it's going to be very unlikely to work. Turn 2, so the Mincer moving up again, and the Sniffs are advancing there so they can shoot. I think they're going to be shooting at the War Machine here. All the other trolls have gone up, and a couple of damage plinked onto the mortar there from the Sniffs. And look at this, so the trolls that were damaged from the flame attack, I hope you can't hear the rain crashing against the window. I waited for the rain to ease off a little bit before I started this broadcast, but it has been pretty terrible all day, so I couldn't wait any longer. Hopefully the noise cancellation will get rid of some of that anyway. So the trolls were able to overrun that little flamey weapon straight into the lesser golems there, and it looks like they've done 8 damage onto them. And the other troll horde there have gone into the greater golem, and they've done 5 damage there. So that's pretty solid, and I've got another troll horde as backup. And here, I've given this horde of golems carrying the push tokens a bit of a dilemma, because I moved all of my ranged units around here into position to shoot at them, and I do a bit of damage to them, but what they would really love to be able to do is move forward and then be surged into my troll horde's flank, which is possible. So it's very unlikely though, because I think they would need 7, I believe it was 7 out of 8 successful rolls on the surge casting, which is very, very unlikely. But I still would rather my opponent didn't try that, because if it does come off, that could be catastrophic. If I lose, potentially I could lose both of those troll hordes the next turn if that happens. So what I would like them to do is go for my Sniffs right down there. That would be probably the best thing I could hope for. So I've put them in their charge arc, hoping that they will then charge into the Sniffs, and then I've got the War Trombone, which can head over that way, and I've got the Flaggit, who can each spend a turn getting in the way of those golems, so that even if they're in my half scoring, they're not going to be getting into the centre, which is where the key objective is that's going to win or lose the game. I just don't want them contesting in the middle because I can just about handle what's in the centre right now with what I've got, I think. But if that unit comes in, then I think it would be a very different matter. So I just want them down here away from the middle, and I can use units to block them up if they commit to going towards those sniffs. And only 2 damage done to them with all that ranged attack. I would have expected a teensy bit more, but they are defense 6, so it's not that unlikely that you would do a tiny amount of damage there. So you can see that's how it looks. I've got the third troll horde as backup there. They are still in difficult terrain at the moment, though. Turn 3 for the Abyssal Dwarf. So he does go for the sniffs in the end, deciding that it's not necessarily a bad option, because the other option was fairly unlikely to work, and they would have had more turns of being shot at. But that's the kind of the best traps are the ones where it's not a really horrible option to go for it. You have to, if you're going to offer someone what is essentially bait, it has to be something worth taking. You can't just offer them something that would help them in no way whatsoever and expect them to dive on it, unless they're a very new player perhaps. But obviously my opponent felt that this was worth going for and decided to go for the sniffs, taking the safe bet of killing one of my units rather than the very unlikely thing of being surged above average into my trolls. And I'm not sure if the mortar hits anything this time. I think it missed again. And there is the Ironcaster. So also, with the Ironcaster not surging now, he's then free to heal up units. So he heals up the golems that you can see on the right here. So that's the other choice that there was. Do you go for a very unlikely surge, or do you heal one of the units? The other option, now I'm not sure if this was possible, let me just go back a second. It may have been possible to get the greater golem surged into the flank of my other troll unit there, but that would have meant no healing, and chances are that unit's going to die anyway, because they're already on 4 damage and they're being charged in the front by the lesser golems, so a flank charge on them, while it sounds nice, might not actually be necessary there. So, and the lesser golems do manage to kill off my trolls there, which isn't too unexpected, but I've started damaging them. They were healed up a bit, but they're on 5 damage now, so another charge from one of my units could take them out at this stage. Trolls do have plenty of crushing strength on their side. And that's the amount of wounds that they're back to now. Confirmation there. And these trolls take a bit of damage from the greater golem, but they're not too worried about that. Only 6 damage at this stage. And the sniffs do get killed as well on the left, as expected, and then that unit is going to spin round and look in the opposite direction. So there's how it looks now, and I don't know if you can see it perfectly from this angle, but my troll units, both of them, I believe, have a charge option into the greater golem. I think they're both in range on him, but that would mean that I wasn't attacking the horde of lesser golems at the top there. And the unit that's in difficult terrain is not able to charge that unit because it's too far away. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to charge the trolls in the middle. They're going to turn around and charge into the horde instead of the unit they're currently engaged with. And you can probably just, from this camera angle, you can just work out how that's possible, because the troll unit is, of course, wider than it is deep. And with that inch gap, that is going to be enough there for them to be able to make contact with the horde at the back there. So they're going to charge into that unit, which then allows me a choice of what to do with the other troll horde then. Do they want to charge into the greater golem, or do I want to shoot that unit, perhaps? You will see. So, in my turn 3, the Mincer moving up again. He's now safely in the enemy half, and he's not really in any danger at this stage. And I think the sniffs may have shot off the breath weapon. Oh no, the breath weapon already died. He got overrun by the trolls. It's wavered the mortar here, the heavy mortar. So that's good enough, stopping it shooting for a turn, and then I can charge it next time. Because the previous turn, I think the mortar actually moved. It didn't shoot because it wanted to be out of charge range of the sniffs. So it actually moved sideways, so I was only able to shoot it this time. But luckily I did get the waver on it. And here you can see that I choose not to charge the greater golem. Instead, I've just parked the flagget in front of it and then just given it some flamey attacks and get it up to 6 damage. And those trolls who charged out of the combat there into the horde do kill them, which is fortunate. It was a risk, because if it hadn't paid off, I would have then definitely been killed, since this unit was already on 6 damage. So they killed the unit and they've turned back to face the greater golem now, who can potentially be surged into them still, but that would mean that the Ironcaster isn't healing anyone and he's not surging the other golems, and there's no guarantee that that greater golem would actually kill them because he's not got that many attacks. So he's got a bit of a dilemma now. So I'm really laying claim to the centre. I've got 2 nice troll hordes there. One of them potentially in danger, but only from a unit that doesn't have a vast number of attacks. And the lesser obsidian golems are pretty much out the game at this stage. They're going to have to take another turn to even get in a position to attack anything. And then I've still got the trombone to block them up in a minute. So you can see that the greater golem can potentially kill my flagget and overrun onto the token and possibly pick it up. But we'll see if he's able to do that. Because I don't want him to pick up the token, because it's possible I may not actually chew through it, because it does have high nerve. So I'd rather my enemy not pick up the token at all. If at all possible, that is. So you can see in turn 4, the greater golem decides he's going to charge into the flagget, try and kill it, and then overrun onto the token. And the other golems have just started turning that corner, looking at the war trombone. So the trolls are not under much threat here. So the flagget is killed, but I don't think he wants to overrun there, because he doesn't want to be flanked by my trolls. I think if I hadn't put the flagget there, I think he would have been able to move onto the token and then turn so that he couldn't be flanked by either of the troll units. I think that sounds about right. So instead of overrunning, possibly wisely decides to just turn round to make sure everyone's in the front. Because if he'd overran, that troll horde that you can see right there would have definitely had a flank attack on him, which would have spelt bad news, even for a huge beastie like that. Raphael Marge is in the chat. Hello there. Hope everyone's picking up some wonderful tactical advice so far here. And you can see that I don't have much left to deal with here, because that mortar's about to be charged. The Ironcaster isn't a threat on his own. This big beastie in the middle is going to be double charged by trolls now, and the war trombone is going to block up that horde of lesser golems who are carrying push tokens, so I'm not even sure they're that eager to be involved in the fight right now. One important thing to note as well, looking at this scene here, in this tournament there are bonus points available for each... it's not for each victory point you get, it's for each token that you hold or that you control at the end of a game, for example, or for each scoring unit in something like Dominate or Invade, and you can get a maximum of 5 added onto your tournament points. So my opponent holding onto those 2 tokens currently is going to get 2 bonus tournament points for that, which is quite a big deal. So if they are just thrown willy-nilly into the centre, then they could get killed and not only lose the game, because there's a small chance they could get in there after being blocked off and kill all my units. Is it worth taking that risk to potentially throw away 2 tournament points that he's currently sitting on? Debatable. So turn 4, the Mincer doesn't have to do much now, he's just hiding. The Sniff troop charge into the mortar. All they have to do is 1 damage each time, which is fairly easy, and they can just stop it shooting. And the trombone parks itself in front of them and just gives them a bit of a toasting, holding them up for another turn because time is ticking away here. And the 2 troll hordes do charge into the greater golem, and one of them has picked up the central objective there when it made that charge. And the unit at the top that's damaged, they are going to be the next line of defense from the big unit of golems, while the unit that's got the objective token is just going to scuttle away. So you can see the situation here. There's not many turns left, and my opponent is a bit stuck because he's going to have to face at least 2 more units before getting to the unit that he would like to kill. Unless the Ironcaster and the Mortar can do something really ridiculous before the end. Turn 5 for the Abyssal Dwarves. So, they actually decide not to attack with the golems. They actually move backwards to safety, so they can't be charged by trolls because he's really thinking about preserving those points now. For tournament purposes, deciding that, you know what, I'm not going to win this game, I'm not going to get that 3rd objective off the trolls, I might as well back away, preserve what I have, which is perhaps the sensible move. Turn 5 for me, the trombone goes up and gives them another bit of a toasting, and the other troll horde, the one that's not carrying the token, gets into position to charge that unit next time. And the horde carrying the token in the middle is just shuffling sideways towards Promised Land there. So the sniffs finish off the mortar this turn as well. So it's looking very, very healthy. It's pretty much a win in the bag now. It's just a question of whether I can kill anything else. There's the mincer looking very healthy over there. Turn 6. So the golems decide, you know what, let's have a piece of that war trombone, and they kill it. And now they're going to be charged by trolls in my turn 6, but not enough to get rid of them. And that is going to be the end of the game. So we do not get a turn 7. Had we got a turn 7, this troll horde may well have died, but it wouldn't have made much of a difference. And I wouldn't have tried to kill this unit. I would have maybe shot at them with whatever I had left with that capability, maybe the sniffs there, but I doubt I would have killed them. So this unit of trolls were perfectly safe though, and they were the one carrying the game-winning objective. And the mincer as well did its job. No need to get into the action, Mr. Mincer. You were just quite happy over there. And other units being used to tie up the obsidian golems there, so that by the time they were in a position to even affect the game, it was too late, so they decided not to even try. And killing the gargoyles early helped with that, of course, because it allowed me to use the sniffs to try and slow them down. So all in all, very successful game 1. And we move on to game 2, which is also at 1,000 points. Feel free to drop any tactical tips that you've picked up from me, by the way, in the chat as well. Or anything you'd like me to elaborate on, or any rules mistakes, of course. There's always plenty of those. Whenever you take extensive pictures of any game, there's always going to be a few little rules blunders that people can't help but commenting on. They have to comment on it, even if it's been mentioned 10 times already in the comments, of course. But I don't mind. So this scenario we have here. This is the... I believe this was the loot scenario. So there are... I believe it is, anyway. I could be wrong. You know what? I can't actually remember which scenario this is now. But there are 3 tokens in the middle, along the centre of the table there. And you know what? If this is... You know what? I'm going to go and grab the rulebook right now, because I have a feeling there may have been a small mistake with this game here. I am going to go and look to get it 100% right though. So bear with me a moment. Okay, I'm back with the rulebook. And I feel like, let's see here. I think this may have been loot. Except the way we played it wasn't that you could pick the tokens up. So I think we made a bit of a mistake with this game here. So you'll just have to keep that in mind as we go on. So it's effectively loot, but with static tokens that aren't moving. I think that's how we played it. Right, so with that in mind, get this book out of the way. Okay, here we go. So behind these trees, I've got 2 sniff troops because it's goblins I'm against here, and they have regiments of sniffs, which I'm very concerned about, because if it comes to just a shooty little chaff battle, I'm not going to win that. There are also some trolls in there, a couple of troll hordes, so less than I've got. There's also a spitter horde though, so superior ranged firepower. There's a war trombone, and there's a king mounted, so he's got 5 shots as well. So there are some similarities between the lists, but it's more shooty, this list I've come up against here. Let's see. Mr. Gorilla is talking about the Mincer not being too pleased at carrying tokens. Well, what can you say? There's going to be plenty of opportunities for the Mincer to fight in this tournament. It was just the Mincer's time to only march up the battlefield and basically win the game on its own almost. So, that rain is getting louder. So those sniffs are hiding there from the enemy shooting. And I'm also hiding my trombone and the flagget from enemy shooting as well behind the trolls. And the Mincer is over on the right. And I've angled it inwards because it can see over the hill that's right in front of it. And I don't want it to be slowed down too much. When the enemy has shooting superiority, I don't want it to have to turn. So I've angled it facing inwards towards the enemy so I can potentially just go at the double straight away and get towards that hill and be in range to threaten. And you can see the trolls there. One of them have fallen off the hill. These hills at events, they're a lot more friendly if the unit... Sometimes, if the unit's in one piece, they're a lot more friendly. There are other terrain pieces, though, where you would want to be in separate pieces to stay on them. So there's no real perfect terrain in Kings of War, I find, except for forests where you can conveniently take the trees out. So my opponent has Sniffs, a regiment, a troll horde. One of them has Dwarven Ale, and the other one has something else, but I can't remember what it is. And there's the king on a spider there, the trombone behind the spitters, who are in difficult terrain. And there's the other sniffs and the other trolls, and here are the objectives, which for the purposes of this scenario are not going to be moving because we played it incorrectly. But there you go. So there's one on the left. The centre one is that Easter egg. I'm not sure if you can tell it's an egg from there because it's not painted. And then the one to the right of it there. So, turn 1. And I get turn 1 here, so immediately I'm just throwing everything forward as fast as it'll go. The enemy has shooting superiority, so why not? Just start moving up there. And you can see I'm just laying down the gauntlet with the trolls. And I shouldn't be in charge range of anything other than the enemy sniffs though, and I'm not sure they'll be too eager to charge in. So my sniffs immediately move into the forest and shoot at the enemy sniffs, but only do 1 damage unfortunately, which is not very nice because now they're going to dive into cover in their first turn and shoot back. So we'll see how that goes, because you can see there is some difficult terrain in front of them there. And turn 1 for my opponent. So there's a bit of an advance there, but obviously wary of the Mincer, those trolls are not too eager to throw themselves in, and they've got shooting support, so why should they? And as I said, these sniffs over on the left-hand side have put themselves immediately into the difficult terrain so they can shoot against my units there, and they plink 1 damage on, and the troops are very susceptible to being wavered and killed even with tiny amounts of damage, much like the Mincer. Dicey Guy has dropped into the chat. Hello there. And the shooting barrage, what does it do? Well, it actually wavers a horde of trolls there, and it's not the best one to be wavered because these are fairly close to the enemy, these trolls here. And look at that. So you can see which unit's wavered there on the right. So that's going to limit what I can charge. I think the troll horde in the middle, though, is actually in range to charge the sniffs on the right of the enemy, to the right of that tower. And whether I take that charge, we shall see. It's risky. Okay, I'll just tell you right now, I do take the charge. Because I thought, you know what? If I don't kill that unit of sniffs, I may end up killing them, but it's going to be a hindered charge, so it's quite likely I won't kill them in one go, and then I'll get flank charged by trolls. But if I get flank charged by those trolls, if they fail to kill me, they're going to get flanked by my trolls, at the very least. There's also the Mincer there that can see over the hill. If they do kill them, they're still going to get charged by my trolls, and by the Mincer as well, most likely. So I think that would be a decent trade, I think. Because that would give me very good control over this side of the table, and that would be good. So turn 2, and there's the charge, which doesn't do much, only 4 damage onto those sniffs there, and they are going to get flank charged by the enemy trolls now. But you can see the Mincer has moved right up there into a really threatening position, and my trolls, who were wavered, have just moved away a little bit, so they'd still be in range to attack the enemy trolls if they do choose to charge my trolls, but I've got out of the sight of the enemy trolls, I think, because I don't want them charging down here where I potentially can't see them, because I wanted the Mincer to be angled more upwards like that. And in the middle, I haven't advanced too far with these lone trolls on their own, because they would like some backup before they start heading over there, because there is a troll horde of equal power to them. There's also a king, and there's lots of shooting and a war trombone there. So we'll see what goes on that side, but I'm not too confident over there. I'm much happier about this right-hand side, and I would rather crush that and then bring the concentration of force over together rather than piece by piece. Over here, a bit more shooting, but no damage done onto those sniffs this time, and there's how it looks. So, Ian has dropped into the chat as well. Good evening. Anyone who's just joined, this is the loot scenario, but being played incorrectly, so you can't pick up any of the tokens. Turn 2 for the other goblins, and you can see that that flank charge does go ahead into my trolls, but it's going to be hindered, so it's not a sure thing that that unit will die. And I wasn't sure why this move was made here, but the spitters actually move forward towards my trolls and get into my charge range, and I think it was to get the war trombone closer so it can start tromboning away at my trolls. However, this is going to give me the opportunity to charge those spitters now. Now, whether that was possibly bait as well, to get me to charge the spitters so that my trolls could then be flanked by the enemy trolls, but we'll see if I've got anything in mind to counter that in a moment. So, you can see that one of my sniff troops has been shot off by the enemy sniffs, and I'm not liking this little war we've got going on here between the two pieces of difficult terrain, because I don't think I'm going to come out on top in this one. And there we go, look at that. So they do not quite enough damage to where you think the trolls are going to die, because I think I got the Flaggets in range to inspire them, which probably proved vital here because they only became wavered and they do have Dwarven Ale. So always put the Dwarven Ale unit in the position where they're going to be taking some form of attack. Preferably not where they can just get steamrolled in one go. If you have to throw away a unit in a position where you know it's going to die because there's just so much that's going to just concentrate its fire on it, then you throw in your least valuable unit, given the opportunity. But if you've got something that's kind of borderline whether it's going to die or not, then putting a headstrong unit in there is often a very good bet. So there's how it's looking, and the Mincer is now going to be able to have a field day. So are my trolls, because once the laser came out, it was deemed that my trolls could see the enemy troll horde just despite the presence of that hill. Turn 3. So the Mincer and the trolls... Actually, let me go back. I don't think the trolls actually join in. Even though I think they could see them, I decided, because I felt it was more important to start moving those trolls down at the bottom over to the left, I decided not to throw them in. I decided to countercharge. When I passed my Dwarven Ale roll, I decided to charge the wounded trolls with the countercharge into the enemy trolls instead of into the sniffs, and the Mincer into the flank, and that was enough to kill them. Because my other horde, there you can see, are heading in that direction. Because I thought, you know what, I've got this side sewn up, that's going to be enough to kill the trolls. Then the Mincer and this troll horde are going to be enough to kill those sniffs easily. So I'll start sending them over that way. My trolls do charge into the spitters, who granted them the opportunity to do so by moving closer. And they could have moved a little bit less, which would have meant I would have made a hindered charge into that difficult piece of terrain, but alas, that's not how it went. And you can see that I've sacrificed my Flagget to block the trolls from charging in there. Now, I believe that I've guaranteed that that unit of trolls can't be charged, but there may have been something my opponent could have done here. If the exact positioning of that flagget, because I had to put him that far away to prevent the overrun being possible into the trolls, I had to put him in that exact position. Then I believe if the trombone moves backwards now, and the spitter horde moves backwards, there may actually be enough room for those trolls to pivot round and possibly touch the trolls. I'm not sure. It would be very, very tight. It may have been slightly too much, slightly too little of a gap for them to fit through, but it's not something that was explored at the time, but it's something to think about. If you have the option to move units out the way so a fightier unit can get in there, then it's something worth pondering. And my sniffs over here put a bit more damage onto the enemy sniffs in these very blurry pictures, but it's not enough to get rid of them, and this little fight is not going my way on that side. Turn 3 for the enemy. So the trolls decide to go for the flagget. He's going to die, but it was a worthy sacrifice to protect the trolls for a turn. And the king storms out and goes for my war trombone, which is the best move for a character like that, probably. If you've got a character with quite a few attacks, or the ability to damage with their attacks easily, then we're thinking from like a Goblin King upwards, basically. A flagget wouldn't count with just one attack. Most standard bearers aren't what I'm talking about here, but heroes that can actually do a little bit of damage. Sometimes, if there's a unit, if let's say it's trolls versus trolls, like is likely to come up in this game here, then a troll horde on average isn't going to kill a copy of itself in one round. But if you have a king to throw in there as well, then maybe that could tip it over the edge to either a waver or a kill. So it's something to consider with those heroes. As useful as it is to be chasing down war machines and such, they are useful because they have just enough attacks where they can be really helpful at swinging in combat. Now these sniffs here, they have wavered those dwarven ale wielding trolls again, so we'll see if that is going to have any effect. And these sniffs have taken a bit of damage now, but they're not dead in that little firing match that's going on the left. Over here, the spitters didn't do too much to those trolls in combat. And in fact, I'm not even sure they did go into combat with them. They may have stayed where they were and let the war trombone shoot over them, in fact. I think that's probably what they did. And the trolls there do kill the flagget, so those trolls of mine are going to have to kill those spitters in one go now to avoid being flank charged next time. So run out of things to block them up with. And the king kills my war trombone, of course. So, in terms of number of units, it's not looking that great, but with positioning, I think it's looking quite good now. Turn 4 for me. So double charge into those sniffs, and the mincer and the troll horde kill them off. And that troll horde is currently lost its damage marker, but I think that comes back in a minute. And these trolls finish off the spitters this round and position themselves so that they're not going to be flanked by the enemy trolls. And they've tried to get themselves in a position where they can attack the war trombone next turn, but of course it can move. And the trolls in the middle there have killed the enemy king in one round, which is nice, and got myself within striking distance of that central objective, which, if you're just joining us, we're playing incorrectly. So the loot tokens are static, and you just claim them at the end of the game, because we're playing it wrong. So those trolls now, the enemy trolls, have got a choice. I think they're possibly in range to charge either one of my troll hordes there. So we'll see which one they go for. And my sniffs at this point are moving closer. They want to get in position so they can jump to try and maybe charge the enemy sniffs in the next turn if they're still alive, and then maybe claim that objective that's hanging there. And this turn just got them up to 4 damage, so still haven't wavered them at all yet. And there's how it looks from the side here. So turn 4 for the enemy, and the trolls there decide to charge into my troll horde that's only on 1 damage and let the war trombone try and deal with the others, which at this stage may be the best choice, trying to take out 2 things rather than just 1, because the war trombone there wouldn't really have been able to get in a position to shoot anything else without cover. And Moving on. What goes on here? Well, these units are still just looking at each other menacingly. The war trombone, I think it does a bit of damage to that unit there. And my sniffs in the woods get wavered, which is annoying because now they're likely to lose this little battle they've got going on against the enemy sniffs. And these trolls will get wavered as well, and these do not have any item that can mitigate the effects of that, so they're going to be a bit stuck. And in the middle, the troll on troll action results in 6 damage being done, or up to 6 damage, so presumably 5 damage since they're already on 1. And it's looking fairly healthy if you look at where the objectives are. The one in the middle is being contested by both of those units, and if they just keep fighting each other, it'll remain that way. And I'm confident I'll be able to kill them eventually, though, because I've got another troll horde and the mincer to come in, and the mincer can, of course, stay where it is and claim that objective there on the right. And the objective on the left looks like it's heading to the enemy. So it's going to be close, though. Turn 5. So troll on troll action commences. Get them up to 9 damage, but can't even waver them by the looks of things. My wavered trolls turn around to face the war trombones. They can definitely charge it next time, regardless where it tries to run off to. And the trolls on the right there have moved in closer, in case the trolls that are wounded 5 times, they didn't regenerate much, so they might die next turn, and then I'll need the other trolls to come in and mop up, and the mincer is just hanging about on the objective. So there we go with that, and over here, not much to report on that side. So turn 5 for the enemy, and look at all that. They regenerate 6 wounds, and then countercharge my trolls. The war trombone has another go at toasting those trolls, but can't wave them a second time. And the sniff off is complete. The enemy sniffs reign supreme. They've killed both my troops of them over the course of the game. And overall, probably not the best use of both my sniff troops there. Tying up a unit that's cheaper than the 2 of them put together. And now they're dead. So the enemy troll horde does kill my troll horde there. So I'm going to have to attack them with a different unit now, but thankfully I have that unit staring right at them. And turn 6. So they steam in there. The trolls get the unit back up to 9, but can't waver them. Gorilla tells us that no yellow-bellied on the mincer feels good. Yes, it does. Yellow-bellied was one of the... On the mincer, I've always felt it was terrible because even a goblin on some kind of gigantic machine with spikes and drills and all sorts on it, surely he's not going to be terrified of anything. If they'd worded it, the yellow-bellied rule on the mincer, as it being kind of unreliable because it's just some shoddily built contraption, that would have been easier to digest, I think, than the goblin driver being scared. Okay, so got them back up to 9, but can't remove them. I think that's the dwarven ale units. They may have become wavered there. But my other troll horde do kill the war trombone easily and then spin round to face the ever-present threat of that troll horde directly in the centre of the table, and the mincer is hanging out there as backup as well. But I am going to need both these objectives to win. So, turn 6 for the enemy. And the troll horde regenerate back to 4 and countercharge into my trolls. And if they actually kill my trolls and the game ends now, then it'll be a victory for my opponent. So I'm going to need turn 7 by the looks of it here. And sniffs have turned round, so they're going to start shooting up my units now that they're not tied up with my sniffs, and they put a little bit of damage onto that unit there. And look at that, they do tons of damage to my dwarven ale wielding trolls, but cannot kill them, thankfully. Because if they'd killed them and the game had ended, that would have been a loss for me there. And we do get turn 7, so it's not ending in a draw because this objective is contested, and otherwise we have 1 each, so it would have just ended as a draw right there. We do get turn 7 though, and because of that, my trolls fail their dwarven ale roll, but thankfully I had another horde waiting just above them to flank charge the enemy horde. It was out of difficult terrain, so it was a hindered charge, but double the attacks. It was enough to kill them, just. So that means I'm going to claim that middle objective now, and It's looking like a win, but the enemy still have a turn to try and kill something. So those sniffs that are sitting on an objective decide to try and shoot, but they do not do enough. So 1 objective for me, 2 objectives for me, 1 for my opponent. So it's another win. And obviously that was razor close. That could have very easily ended in a draw or even a loss with some slightly different dice rolls in the last couple of turns there. But as it is, it's another win. So we're about to head into game 3. Gorilla says, do they even have brakes? I don't think the Mincer would have brakes on it. They probably just point it towards the enemy and pull a lever and it just starts going until it's dead or crashed into a wall or something, I would imagine. Okay, so this is the 1,800 point list coming into play now, so I will just refer to my army list sheet here. And this is where it gets extra spicy. So I'm up against Trident Realms in this game. And this is the raise scenario, and that is where you have 3 objectives in your opponent's half of the table, and your goal is to control those at the end of one of your turns from turn 2 onwards, and then you can raise them, they disappear, and you gain a victory point. And then there's 1 point in the center that you want to control at the end of the game, which can often act as a bit of a tiebreaker. So, going down my list here, we have a couple of troll hordes on the right hand side, and they've got more upgrades now. So, the unit on the right there has the Brew of Courage. Now, I normally go for the Chalice of Wrath on my troll units, but with the lists that I made for this tournament, I've gone for trying to give the units more nerve rather than directly protecting them from becoming wavered. Dwarven Ale is still in there, of course, but the other upgrades are designed to just boost the nerve, because in my bigger list I then bring in the Banner of the Griffin as well, which we'll get to later. So, the Brew of Courage on those trolls on the right there. The next troll horde along doesn't have any upgrade. We've got a Bruiser, we've got 2 War Trombones, we've got the other 2 troll hordes. The one with the Dwarven Ale is the same in the middle there, and on the left, that one has the Staying Stone. There is another Bruiser, Harambe the Bruiser. And further along, we have Grogger's Goons, a horde of them. We have the Mincer, and we have the Flaggit with the Diadem again. Then over on the left, we have both of my Fleabag Sniff units, which have now been upgraded to regiments in this bigger list. So that is the army list right there. Onto my opponent's force, we have a Nooker. We have a mounted character of some description. I think, is it called a centurion on some kind of beastie? But they're both very fast. I don't think they fly, but they are speed 9, I think. In the middle, we've got 2 regiments of heart piercers, a horde of ensnarers. There is a siren in the middle there. There is a war machine, and I can't remember what it's called now. But it's got 2 attacks, and it hits on 4s, and I think it's piercing 4 with a blast on its hits. There is a flying, I think he's called a centurion, and he's got the wings. He's behind the war machine there, I think. And there is another character, and there is 2, I think they're Geigers, 2 units there on the right. I think that's what they're called, Geigers, whatever. And there's a couple of formations in there, so they are extra fast. And there's another formation that does something else, but I can't remember what it is, but it's juicy. So I don't know Trident Realms very well, because I haven't played against them very often, and it's been quite a while as well. So I put the objectives I want to raise. I've put 2 on the right hand side there, and 1 more to the left. And there's a central one. My opponent has 1 on the left there. There's 1 kind of in the middle, but slightly to the left, I think, in those trees. And I think this one's on the right, possibly. And those 2 are on the left. So, turn 1. I'll just go back to the wide shot and give you my strategic breakdown of the game, though. And the logic behind all the positioning. So, in fact, all of my opponent's objectives that he's trying to raise are on the left-hand side. So, the only units he's actually got over there are the 2 main units are the 2 fast, speed 9 monster type units. He's got shooting in the middle, and he's got everything else that's pretty slow, not as fast as my trolls for the most part, on the right, which is playing more of a defensive role, because those are the objectives I want to get to, those 2 directly in front of where I've got all my trolls. So I've got both troll hordes and both bruisers on the right hand side. So they're going to be the ones that are steaming forward, trying to just wipe out the enemy force, backed up by the 2 war trombones, and then I want to claim those 2 objectives with them. On the left, I'm not that concerned about claiming my 3rd objective. I've got my 2 sniff regiments over there who could jump on it if required later on in the game, and the mincer, who is to the left, but he's defending one of the objectives as well that I want to stop the enemy from taking, and he's also in a position where I could maybe send the mincer towards the middle objective at the end of the game if it's still alive. But we shall see. But I'm quite confident when this game was set up that I can prevent the enemy from taking all their objectives, and I can take most of mine. But we'll see how it goes, whether that is actually the case or not. So, zooming back along here, past the enemy force again. Oops. I just skipped turn 1 there. I think I did. There we go. So turn 1, and my opponent elects to go first, I think. And it was a difficult choice, though, because there's not that much ranged firepower that can strike in turn 1. But in this scenario, you do want to be forward, fighting the battle on the opponent's half, ideally, because then there's more chance of you taking the objectives you want and less chance of them getting their greasy hands on the objectives that you're protecting. So, there's hills as well around here. So those Gigas are hanging out behind the hill. The ensnarers are on top of a hill there. And over here, the Nooker and the other mounted character, who are very scary, are poised to strike at my sniffs. And I don't want them to claim that objective next turn, so I'm not going to be able to just go backwards. I want to stop them holding that as long as possible, so you'll see what my plan is for that in a moment. So look at that, it's a human pointing finger. And there's the battle line moved forward quite a bit. And the shooting just does 1 damage to my troll horde from the artillery. Turn 1 for me, so everything's moving forward. And my troll horde that's partially propped up on a hill there can't see the enemy and can't be seen by them because neither side can see over the hill there. The troll bruiser and the troll horde to the right can see the enemy, but I think I'm out of their charge range, but they're within my charge range, so I'm laying down the gauntlet to them. Do you want to come in here and fight, or are you going to back away and let me get closer to those juicy objectives that I want? In the middle, I've got trolls steaming up as well, and the bruiser up there. And I'm just going to have to survive a bit of heart piercer shooting, I think, if I want to get into combat. I'm going to have to multi-charge, if possible, on the ensnaring horde, because it's going to be very difficult to kill them. All the enemy units are going to be difficult to kill, in fact. They've either got high defense or they've got ensnare and regeneration. So it's going to be tough to chew through them. But I'm sure my opponent feels the same way about my units, who have mostly got regeneration as well. And Grogger's goons have moved up there towards the enemy. And the mincer is just hanging out on that objective there to stop the enemy claiming it. And here's what I do with the sniffs. So I've got both of them within 3 of this objective the enemy would like to claim, and then they both shoot at the same target and actually do 6 damage to that character there. And what's probably going to happen, if they were to charge at 1 unit each, I'm confident that they wouldn't kill them, so that it just ties them up for longer. And they're probably going to charge into the same one to just guarantee that they kill it, but that means they're not going to be able to take that objective yet, because I've still got a regiment hanging out on it. And there's the damage that's dealt there. So, battle line's getting closer. We should be getting some combat very soon. Turn 2. And the Nooker and the mounted hero do go into the same unit of sniffs, which is pretty much expected, but it's a sacrifice I'm willing to make because I want to hold them up as long as possible. These 2 models are ideal for taking the objectives that they want. They're speed 9, and they can just dance around the back and mop up all the objectives that I don't want to be sitting on, because I don't have any ranged units to sit back there on them. And these sniffs are the only units that I've got that are mobile enough that can run around and do that job. Heart piercers, what do? Well, they put a bit of damage onto Harambe the Bruiser, and the other one puts a bit of damage onto Grogger's Goons, which isn't going to worry them because they can regenerate, and it's not that much damage. The Siren, however, I think it's called Siren's Call, is it? The spell where it pulls a unit closer to it but doesn't do any damage, but it does disorder it. So that War Trombone can't shoot now. And you can see that the flying hero has landed on a hill behind my lines as well. So one of the War Trombones is going to be able to get to him, I think, but the one on the hill obviously can't, which would have been nice to have both of them going after him, but one of them has now been pulled away and disordered, so it can't help out. So the one all the way on the right there is just going to be able to get in range to try and scorch him, I think. And the Regiment of Sniffs does go down, but they're not going to be able to take that objective right now. And they position themselves like so afterwards. So the Nooker overruns, and the mounted hero turns to face the Sniffs. However, that's not going to be enough of an angle there. The Sniffs will easily be able to move out the way while remaining 3 inches from that objective. So I think if that hero had been angled slightly more upwards from this camera angle, then that could have prevented the Sniffs from doing what they're about to do. Okay, so no objectives claimed yet, and we're moving on to my turn 2. So I get the charge in, the double charge on this unit, which is the Gigas, I believe it's supposed to be pronounced, and they are defense 6, I think. So only 5 damage done there, which means that the Troll Bruiser is likely to be flank charged by the other unit, but I'm not overly concerned about that because I've got the first hit in there and I've got another Troll unit as backup. Because the other Troll unit on the hill there, were they attacking anything? Don't think so. I think they just went up on the hill so that they can actually see something. Yeah, that's right, because if the unit there that wants to flank charge the Bruiser, if they want to charge into the Troll Horde instead, then that's fine because it means the Bruiser isn't being flanked, so it can't do both. And in the middle, Harambe the Bruiser and one of the Troll Hordes double charge into the Ensnarers, get a bit of damage on them, just make a start on them so that we can hopefully kill them at some point. It's going to be tough though because they do regenerate and that Ensnare is difficult. I'll be looking to try and get a flank on some of these units when possible. Grogger's Goons have just got right up into threat range of the Heart Piercers, so it's either you come and fight me or we're going to charge you instead. And look at this. So the Sniffs dance around the side out of the viewing arc of the mounted hero there and shoot it along with the diadem on the flagget and actually waver that hero. And the Nooker can't see anybody at the moment, so everyone's just moved out of the way. I think it might be able to see, actually it can't even see the Mincer at this stage. The Mincer has positioned itself so it can't be seen as well. So that Nooker is going to have to spend a turn not doing much and just turning round, I think. So there's how it's looking right now. I've accepted that the Bruiser on the right is probably going to die by being flanked, and I'm not too displeased with how it's going though because I've got towards the objectives I'm looking for, and the left is kind of a little mini battle all on its own. I've not committed many units over there to protecting those 2 objectives, but we'll see if it pays off. Turn 3. So you can see that the wavered hero is just able to turn round a bit. The Nooker has put itself in the difficult terrain there, looking at the Mincer. Of course, I think some of these units have got Pathfinder, so it's not really concerned about being in difficult terrain there. The Ensnarers countercharge the Trolls. There's always a possibility when you're countercharging units that if you countercharge one, you may end up being flanked by something else. So that's always something to consider. I'm not sure whether that was the case here, whether that was anything to worry about. But whenever you're up against multiple units, always think about, if I countercharge this one and it doesn't pay off, where does this leave me in relation to the units I'm not countercharging? So that flying hero there moves off the hill away from the War Trombone because it's wavered. And the Bruiser is being flanked and the other Troll Horde is being countercharged in the front, as expected. The Siren, what does it do this time? I think it may have something like Drain Life because it puts some damage onto Harambe the Bruiser there, and I think it heals up something with that. I think that might be the case. Okay, so the Heart Piercers put some damage onto Grogger's Goons, up to 12, but not quite enough. They can't remove them. These Trolls take a fair chunk of damage there, but they are not wavered either. And the Troll Bruiser is of course dead from that furious flank charge that he left himself open to. And the enemy unit turns there. However, what you can't really tell from this angle, because the unit is partially sliding off the hill, the way they're positioned, the Geigers or Gigas, someone's going to tell me what's the official line from Mantic on the pronunciation of that, but they've positioned themselves on the hill in such a way that my troll unit on the right, when the other unit bounces away, my troll unit there will be able to turn and flank charge them. So I'm definitely going to take that opportunity in a moment. And here, the trolls don't take much damage from the ensnarers. There's how it's looking. And turn 3. So that's exactly what happened. So the two troll hordes, one of them into the flank, and then it's turned back again, face the other unit. And the other horde has just turned to face the middle of the battlefield. Now, I was having a bit of an internal debate which way to have this unit facing, and I felt, perhaps overconfidently, that the trolls that were surviving there would be able to handle that unit. And I've now turned a combat unit away from them. So I was prioritising trying to get a flank charge on the Ensnarer horde. So we'll see whether that is going to be successful in a minute. I send 2 troll hordes into them now. The Bruiser has gone elsewhere. We'll see where he's gone in a minute. So the double front charge there, the 2 hordes. And the Bruiser actually spotted there was an opportunity for a flank charge on one of the Heart Piercer units that you could just about see. But unfortunately, it was the worst Bruiser attack roll ever. He hits on 3s. I think I only got about 3 hits with him. So, Harambe, you've let yourself down there. And overall, only gets the unit up to 5 damage along with Grogger's goons. And also, what this helped me do as well, there is an objective that's to the left of what's going on here. So by charging Harambe in first, that meant that when Grogger's goons charged in, they were positioning themselves way further over to the left than they would have been otherwise, which is much closer to one of the objectives that I want. So you'll see on the wide shot how close they are in a minute. And the Flaggit and the Sniffs over here managed to kill that mounted character that they wavered last time, so good job from them, and that objective is looking pretty secure. And the Mincer has just turned to face the Nooker, ready to take a frontal charge from it. But yeah, you can see on the right of the screen there, the objective that Grogger's goons are now much closer to than they were before. So my plan is here, if they can survive one round of being charged possibly by one of the Heart Piercers, I won't even attack them back. I'm just going to shuffle sideways and be within 3 inches and claim that objective. So that's my plan at the moment. I've also got the Sniffs up there who could potentially help out with claiming that, but I kind of want to leave them where they are because they're defending that objective from the Nooker, who's going to have a hard time claiming it with them dancing around it, if he also wants the objective that the Mincer's on. So there's how it's looking, and have I overcommitted towards the middle now and left not enough over on the right, because there is an objective there? We'll see. Turn 4. And Harambe, because of his terrible attack roll, gets flanked now by one of the Heart Piercer units, and Grogger's goons take a frontal charge as well. And what damage is going to be inflicted here? Let's see. So you can see that the Ensnarers countercharged into the horde on the left. And let's see what kind of damage we're looking at. Oh, there's actually some healing going on here. It may have been a regeneration that got their wounds back. Yeah, because look, they're down to 5 now, so ridiculous. And this hero is just perched on a hill and he regenerates them as well. And the artillery, what does it hit? Puts 4 damage on this horde of trolls that just turned away from the action up there. And Siren is just hanging out around there a bit. And Grogger's goons take some damage. And that must be the drain life. Grogger's goons were drained, and then that horde of ensnarers that I've been fighting for a while now are back to only 3 damage. And those trolls that took damage from the artillery do become wavered after only 4 points of damage, so that's bad news for them. Because that means they can't join in the fight against the ensnarers yet. And the Nooker manages to kill off the Mincer and claim that objective, so one of the objectives has fallen, the enemy have taken it. I need to start thinking about getting objectives now. Grogger's goons take a bit of damage there, but or I'm not sure if they do actually, not much if any. And Harambe the Bruiser gets wavered, so is blocking up the enemy, which is okay. And those trolls don't take much damage from the Ensnarer horde at all, but this troll horde do get killed by the Gigas / Geigers, and that could be annoying now because that other troll horde are facing the wrong way and they're wavered, so this could potentially lead to some kind of flank collapse if I'm not careful to remedy this situation. Moving on. So, hold on a second, let me go back. So that unit, I think what it looks like here, the waiver token is not there anymore. So what may have happened here is that we worked out that they shouldn't have actually been wavered in the first place after the token was put on them. Because it seems to have gone in this next shot here. But it was clearly there a minute ago. So I'm going to assume, let's see here. So yeah, it's definitely that unit with the bunny rabbit at the front there. And then in the upcoming shot, it's still there at that point, and then it's not there now. So we must have determined that it shouldn't have been there. That's all I can think of, because I don't actually have a strong memory of that incident. Hopefully it didn't just fall off by mistake or something, because that would have been terrible. So what happens here, that unit that did have a waiver token on them temporarily, and then it went away. So hopefully we decided that they shouldn't have been wavered after all, because the roll wasn't high enough after the picture was taken. Then they flank charge into, yeah, because that's the unit there with the objective token. So they flank charge the Ensnarers, who are also charged by the trolls in the front. And these trolls here, these were previously fighting the Ensnarers, but I'll take you back to the wide shot here. So, the unit that's got 1 damage on them, the troll horde there, behind one of the objective markers, they actually have an angle to make it through to charge into the artillery piece there, which is nice. So they are going to go that way, which allows the unit on the hill to charge in to the Ensnarers as well. And the unit at the front with the staying stone, which is a little obelisk there that are propped up on the hill, they also go in. Themo has joined the chat. Hello there. So they steam in with that charge, kill off the Ensnarers, which is tasty. And Grogger's goons, they do that shuffle move I was talking about, where they just move sideways a bit and get to within range of that objective, so I claim that as well. So that's 2 objectives for me now. And the 2 war trombones move forwards towards this surviving unit of Gigas, and can't do much to them though, despite a lot of shots there, but they're defense 6, I think, those creatures, so very tough. Turn 5, so the Nooker has finished fighting the Mincer now, so it just runs away and gets onto the other back objectives. That's 2 for the enemy, it will be at the end of this turn, but the one the Sniffs are guarding is still safe. So I need to get to the objective on the right, just below my face here, and also make sure my opponent doesn't hold the center objective at the end. And you can see that the flying hero has attacked one of the war trombones. The Gigas have charged into one of the troll hordes, and the heart piercers are going to shoot Harambe the Bruiser on the left there. And Harambe is gone. 1 trombone down, 1 remaining. And these trolls take a huge amount of damage there, but not a very good nerve roll by the looks of it, since they are not dead. And there we go, so it's looking quite good. I'm staring towards the objective with the top troll unit there that are only on 1 damage. If they go straight forward and charge that hero, then they can potentially get to the objective next turn. And the other trolls, the ones that are half on the hill, half hanging off it, are heading towards the centre to make sure my opponent does not claim the middle, because Grogger's goons are clinging to life at the moment. 2 objectives each at this stage. Turn 5. So the trolls do charge in, and they don't kill the hero though, so they're going to have to try and do that next turn. And my trolls against the Gigas do a bit more damage. The war trombone kills off the Nooker, which was looking threateningly at my lines, so it was a good job I killed it off this turn. Even though it has taken 2 objectives for the enemy, so it's definitely done its job. The troll horde that were on the hill charge into the heart piercers there, and Grogger's goons fight the other unit, with the flagget hanging out in there as well. He's really there to push the enemy backwards a bit, to keep them away from the objective more. Because you can see where it is, that central objective that could be really crucial at the end. And my sniffs, you can see, moved up into the forest. They tried to shoot the Nooker as well. I'm not sure whether they actually hit it, because it would have had cover from the hill. Turn 6. So, the other war trombone is about to get eaten by the same flying hero. And those trolls that have just been charged by that big, nasty Defense 6 crab unit might die as well now. And the heart piercers, I mean, look at that. They must have regenerated, both those units there, or been drained life onto them, because they're looking quite healthy now. Yep, I think the Siren drained some life off those trolls, perhaps. War trombone down, as expected. Trolls down. So those trolls there at the top only have 1 unit to chew through that hero, finish it off, and then get to the objective before they get flanked and eaten alive by giant, snippy monsters of doom. And the trolls against the heart piercers. Heart piercers aren't that great in combat, so they should be alright. And Grogger's goons are actually regenerating faster than they're taking damage at this point. So I'm quite happy with that. I'm fairly confident at this stage. It's 2 objectives each, and I am holding the middle one at the moment. Turn 6. So, turn 6 for the goblins. Look at this. Wavered 1 unit of heart piercers with the goons. The other unit isn't killed by the trolls either. And the sniffs that were defending the objective all the way out on the left for the whole game have come over here now into the middle, just to add a little bit of extra unit strength to this point, just in case it comes down to that. And the trolls kill the individual, overrun 1 inch, and just get to within range to claim that objective, just get within 3 inches of it. It was literally less than a millimetre in it. So we had to very carefully get an exact 3-inch measuring device and put it right down there without touching anything, very, very carefully, and it was just within range. So 3 objectives there for me, and I've also got the middle, and that's the end of the game, so that's going to be another win. Another close one, though. That could have definitely gone either way. There was one point where Grogger's goons were bearing down on the 2 heart piercer regiments, and I think a 9 may have been required to kill them, and an 8 was rolled, something like that. And had they died, that would have definitely messed up my plans big time. There were a couple of other things that went well also. The sniffs on the left, even though I think I played them well, they also managed to waver the hero that was out there, which was very, very handy. I think they got a decent roll to do that. And possibly I messed up a bit on the right by turning the troll unit away from the unit of Gigas there when I could have gone in and finished them off afterwards. That was possibly a mistake because that nearly cost me one of the objectives. So possibly I should have done that instead. But overall, it was a good game and a very nice looking army there, as you saw. Can't go wrong with some crabs. And now we're going into game number 4 with yet another army list. So let's refer back to this gigantic wad of paper I've got here. So this is my 2,500 point list, and I'm against the one army that I wanted to avoid in the whole tournament, but especially in this round, was the Twilight Kin or regular elves, because they can both bring massive amounts of shooting that does really reliable damage and speed, which are the 2 things I wanted to avoid the most. So this list, you'll see perhaps why I was worried about facing a list like this when you hear my list. And the scenario here is pillage. So this is where you have to be on the objectives at the end of the game, and they're randomly spread out across the table, positioned by each player. We also had a vast amount of time for this game as well. I think it was 1 hour 15 minutes each, which is really huge in Kings of War. You normally don't get anywhere near that long. So this list, 2,500 points of goblins, I was playing around with a couple of different lists. You saw I had some 2,600 point practice games a few weeks ago, And that list, I had quite a lot of anti-flyer stuff in there and anti-shooting stuff. I had things like Critter's Call on a wizard. I think I had a bigot running around on his own who can potentially disorder things, or take out war machines or stop things from flying and shooting. However, this is the list I ended up going with, which is quite different to that in a few ways. There's no more beasts in it either. Since they were always failing the low-bellied tests for me, I just didn't take any. So here's my list. We've got Cuzlo and Madfall, who I think is a little bit underwhelming, at least the way I've used him so far. I don't think he's cut out for the role that I want to use him for. I want to use him the way you would use Lycanis, for example, threatening flanks and attacking things, but I don't think he's really good enough for that, for his point value. I think speed 8 is just on the borderline of being useful for that role, but it's not quite enough if you ask me. I think he dies a bit easily as well in one go, which is what you don't want because he's got regeneration. Then we've got the Fleabag Sniffs again. We've got Grogger's Goons. We've got the Flaggit with the Diadem. We've got the War Trombone directly behind. We've got the Mincer in there as well. We've got the Troll Hordes are all the same as the last list. There's one with Dwarven Ale. We've got the War Trombone, second one there. We've got Bruiser. We've got 2 Giants in this list. Can you tell that maybe some of the motivation for this list was based on what I could fit in my army box rather than how many units I could take, because the Giants are expensive and they don't take up a lot of floor space. 2 Giants in there. And I wanted to have a list with Giants regardless. I've wanted to take 2 Giants for a while because I haven't done it for quite a long time. And this is a points level where you can usually get away with it. And it's only one round of the tournament, so what's the worst that could happen? And there is a Troll Horde behind them that doesn't have anything. Then there is another Flaggit. This one has the Holy Hand Grenade. Then there is a Bruiser. Now the other Bruiser, the one that was in the last shot here, that one has the Blade of Slashing. And Harambe, you can see in the middle of the shot here, has the Banner of the Griffin, which is going to give the trolls a bit of a boost. And it'll also help out other units that Harambe can't inspire as well. There's a Troll Horde there next to Harambe, and that is the one that has the Brew of Courage, I think. So kind of doubling up on the rallying effect of Banner of the Griffin there. A Trombone behind, another Sniff unit, and another Troll Horde. Let's move me out the way for a second so you can actually see them. There they are, that's the one with the Staying Stone in the corner there. Over to the enemy force. Now, there is a regiment of Blade Dancers, who I am going to vastly underestimate in this game. It helps to look at your opponent's unit stats beforehand, but I went into this game not thinking they were particularly powerful. Let me just make sure I haven't missed out any of my unit upgrades artifacts here. I think I've given you all of them. So, there is a dragon. The Twilight-kin dragon is very annoying because it's got a lot of lightning bolt. There are 2 units of knights. One is a regiment, the other one is a troop. There is a horde of crossbows, and they have the piercing item. There is a hero next to them who has, I think it's fireball or lightning bolt, one or the other. There are 2, I think, are they Dragonfire teams in the Twilight-kin? Is that what they're called? But that's what they're doing. 2 of those. Those are the kind of 3 elves on a base. That's what they're representing. Then there is an Abyssal Archfiend behind. Now, there are no allies allowed in this, but I think certain Abyssal units are just part of the Twilight-kin list, presumably. There is a unit of kind of your more standard infantry there, but I can't remember what they're called. There is another regiment of knights and another Archfiend. So there is a ton of lightning bolt. There is a horde of crossbows. This is going to be difficult because I am going to be outshot, most likely. I don't have that much shooting, and most of it's short range. And I'm also drastically outsped as well. The enemy has a lot more speed than I do. I've got 2 units that can compete in the speed stakes. They're both weak, and they don't really want to be in combat. So we'll see exactly how that plays out now. So turn 1. And I like to go first because, you know what, I think I'm just going to throw everything forward as fast as possible and close the gap on these really fast, really shooty units. and try and get up there, threaten things, make them come to me and fight, and then I'll be right up in their face. I'll just ignore where most of the objectives are, because the ones I've placed, I put one. In fact, let's just go back a second. I'm going to go all the way back to the wide shot here. So there is an objective right at the bottom of the screen, off camera in the corner, which I placed. There is one right under my face in the top corner, which you can see now, and I placed that as well. So I was thinking that I would like to put objectives right out on the flanks, and then win the roll-off and give my opponent this side of the table. Even though it's got more objectives on it, there's nowhere good for the crossbows to stand. They would not want to stand in the corner of the battlefield holding an objective, and I've got way more drops than the enemy, so they don't have anything that they would want to just sit on those objectives in their own deployment area for the whole game. So that was the plan, but unfortunately I did not win the roll-off. My opponent elected to stay on the side where he'd put an objective on the piece of difficult terrain that the crossbows actually started on. So that was my tactical thinking there. Because there always should be some consideration to where you place those objectives. So, as I said, turn 1, steaming everything forward. I've got my sniffs up there who can do a bit of shooting, so a little bit of damage is going to be plinked in turn 1. You can see there's a teensy bit on that dragon. And on the other side, everything's steaming up as well, making sure that none of my more fragile stuff can immediately be charged by hiding it behind the other units. And I think a bit of damage is plinked onto one of the Archfiends as well. 3 on the dragon, 1 on the Archfiend. So as a start, I would say that's okay. However, if I wind back, you'll see I've actually made a mistake with the giants here, which is going to come back and bite me. And you can see there, the giants are pretty much slightly more than a base width apart from each other. I think that's accurate, looking at them there. However, when they move, you'll see that that gap has got smaller. So obviously I've slid them up and somehow they've moved slightly closer together as they were going through some kind of error. And that's going to come back and bite me a little bit, unfortunately. They are perfectly aligned. They've travelled the same distance up the battlefield, but somehow one of them ended up angling inwards a bit. So they've got closer together, which is bad. And you'll spot why when we go into the opposing turn 1. So here you go, look at this. A double charge with the blade dancers and one of the knight units, the knight troop, into one of the giants. And because they're now slightly closer together, that means that the other giant is blocked up and is not a threat. Because what I would like to do, ideally, because the crossbows now don't have to move backwards, so they can fire at full potential, because they don't have to worry about this left-hand giant charging them. If these two giants were the same distance apart, it may just have been possible for when the unit bounces off an inch, for the giant on the left to possibly charge the crossbows. And had that been the case, then maybe a double charge wouldn't have been declared in the first place, or if it was, then the crossbows would have had to move and make them less effective at shooting in the next turn. But that slight bit of inaccurate movement there may be important. It's possible that that wouldn't have made a difference anyway. It may have, the distances may have not been that great to actually affect it, but it's possible. So always be careful when you're moving units up like that, to make sure that you're moving them in a direct straight line and not kind of veering off in one direction inadvertently. And look at this little shooting battery of death here. So 2 breath attacks. I think there's the fireball on that mounted caster, and there's also the Archfiend's lightning bolt. And as a result of that, the giant is dead. And the crossbows as well. Everything just arrowed in on it. The giant is just toasted instantly in one go. And I thought I'll throw both those giants up, meaning that my opponent will have to engage both of them to stop them charging the archers. But unfortunately, they ended up close enough together so that the double charge blocked both of them in. Wow, wow, wow. And then they're so tall as well that in this situation it didn't matter, but often they're so tall that units don't have any kind of penalty shooting them sometimes if you just send height 1 units into them, for example. Rafflemarge says, will you try Warcry? Maybe. Some people say it's good, but I don't know about that. We'll see. Haven't looked into it too much yet. Okay, so the other giant's dead in combat as well, and this is when I found out that the blade dancers are actually capable of kicking vast amounts of butt. I think they have the Brew of Strength on them, possibly. They have 25 attacks, and they just murder things. And there is a giant murdered. Both giants dead immediately. And I say, okay, I can accept that because that's got the enemy close to me now. I can actually declare some charges and start killing things now. So we've got the game where I want it a little bit. So let's make sure these giants haven't died in vain, and let's go and crack some skulls. So turn 2 for the goblins. Now the trolls aren't in charge range of anything, and they would like to avoid being charged by knights and a dragon. So they have these sniffs in front of them, so they can absorb a charge first, and then the trolls can charge whoever charged the sniffs. War Trombone moving up and put some damage onto the knights on the hill. And here, this was the troop of knights were double charged by a bruiser and horde of trolls, and they killed the troop of knights quite easily. The blade dancers were charged by a bruiser and a horde of trolls, and very disappointing amount of damage. I think the trolls were actually hindered, but the bruiser wasn't. I think that's the right way around. But even with that, you'd expect to do more than 5 damage there. The bruiser on his own can often do almost that, if not that much. But this is the one with the Banner of the Griffin, not the Blade of Slashing, so slightly less reliable. But still, I would have expected to do a teensy bit more damage than 5, but unfortunately not. And in the middle, everything's moved up, and I've made sure the Mincer can't be charged by anything, because that is there as my backup. That wants to charge and heavily damage anything that charges Grogger's goons now. I think the unit of knights in the woods there, those are woods by the way, has the Potion of the Caterpillar, by the way. And my sniffs hanging out over on the left are just sitting on a hill, plinking away shots at people, and you can see Cuzlo all the way over on the left there, just flanking the enemy, making sure those knights can't just sit back while the enemy shoot me, forcing them to actually engage or get flank charged in a minute. There he is. And I took another picture without the casualties in there. And turn 2 for the enemy. So, knights into the sniffs, which is pretty much what I expected and kind of hoped for because it'll give the trolls a chance to fight. Dragon into the War Trombone. Blade dancers into the trolls. But those are the trolls with +1 nerve, and they've also got Banner of the Griffin there, so I'll be hoping they can survive. Then the 2 Archfiends both charge into this troll horde. And then what does the crossbow horde manage to do? 6 damage on Harambe and a waver. No! But at least he's not dead. And what's this? The Mincer has died? Well, that's because lightning bolts were thrown. And I can't even remember who it was from now. But something targeted the Mincer, did 3 damage to it. And down goes the Mincer. Down goes one of my backup plans. The Sniffs die, of course, but they were willing to make that sacrifice there. So that would have been a situation where a troop of Sniffs would have been better because they were having to throw themselves away and they weren't in too much danger of being shot off. So maybe that's something to think about. And the Blade Dancers just do a zillion damage to the trolls, and I'm pretty sure they got them to double 1. So every time they attack so far, they've been doing minimum 15 damage, I think. They are absolute combat beasts, and I'm going to have to try and kill them now. Seriously. And the trombone goes down to the dragon. As expected, the dragon is actually where the base is there, but it wouldn't actually stand up because it's a bit unbalanced. And Grogger's goons are killed in one go as well by that infantry unit and the knights. And the troll horde are dead in one go as well from the double archfiend attack. So, as you can see, it's kind of a pick your poison type thing in this game. You can either sit back and get shot to death with lightning bolts and crossbows, or you can move forward into charge range, and all you can do really is minimise how many units can hit you at once, which is difficult because they're all so fast. You're just going to hope that you've got enough units so you can absorb that hit and then strike back and kill them on the counter. And that's where they're positioning themselves afterwards. So there's how it looks, and I've lost quite a lot of units already, and it's only the end of turn 2, but I am in some positions to strike back now. And at the end of the game, it is going to be all about the objectives as well. You can see those knights have turned to face Cuzlo. And my options for Cuzlo are just hang around, maybe sit on an objective at the end of the game, or move around behind the enemy to threaten further and then get flamed to death by breath weapons, or attack something while he's still alive and cause a bit of a distraction and slow something down. So we'll see what I go for in a moment. And you can see I took a wide shot immediately after this turn. So you can see that Cuslow does actually go into the knights rather than just hanging around. And I would have liked to go for the flank of the archers, but unfortunately I knew for a fact that those two breath attacks would just immediately scorch him to death because he's only defense 4, so he would have been scorched big time there. So Sniffs on the hill, back away a bit out of charge range, team up with the War Trombones, and put some damage onto the Archfiends. Cuslow does a bit of damage to those knights, so I'll be hoping he can survive one round now that he's taken away their Thunderous Charge. The Trolls kill the knights on the hill, which is nice, in one go. Look at that, it looks like they've done 14 damage, so that's an obscenely good roll for the Trolls there. Now, look at this. My Trolls. I had a choice of double charging these Blade Dancers with the Troll Horde and a Bruiser. I elected not to do that. Big mistake, because the Bruiser is currently steaming off ahead to go after the crossbows there, just to threaten them, because otherwise I wouldn't have been close enough to be a threat to them. So I decided a single charge would be enough to take out this already damaged unit. However, the Trolls did terribly in close combat and only did 5 damage. I'd be hoping to do a lot more than that, because on average each round Trolls are going to do 9 hits, and I'm pretty sure they were wounding on 2s. So they definitely rolled below average there to only, I think it was another 5 they added on, got them up to 10, but still you would hope to get rid of them with that. But alas, no. So those Blade Dancers are alive, and if they carry on the trend, they're just going to mince through another unit in one go that's undamaged again. And the other Troll unit kind of made up for it by killing the Knights. And the Wavered Harambe just got out the way there. You can see that my grenade-wielding Flaggett at the bottom there lobbed a grenade into the flank of the dragon, but I'm not sure if it actually hit. Turn 3 for the Twiglet Kin. So both War Trombones are going to get eaten by an Archfiend and that infantry unit there. The dragon charges into the Trolls, represented by Base there, because he won't really fit in there because he's too pokey. There he is in combat. Units moving out the way, and the Troll Bruiser here is going to be shot with everything. Sniffs gets shot with a bit of a lightning bolt action. The Bruiser there takes a bit of damage from shooting. But look at that, he takes more damage from all that shooting around there, up to 10, but gets double wand. So very, very handy there. Nice time for double wand to come up, so that Bruiser is still in the game. You would have expected at least a waver with that. And then this Flaggett, who was attacked by some shooting attacks as well, also gets double wand on 7 damage. So that's fun, that keeps him alive, so I'm going to be able to have a bit of a diadem action next time. And then this is 3 dice rolls in a row, every single one double wand. This one clearly didn't really matter because the unit was only on 1 damage, but it was just funny just to document it, just for the fact that it was 3 consecutive dice rolls of double wand. How important they are will be debatable, though. This one could be, because the Bruiser is now going to be able to tie up the crossbows for a turn. This one, maybe. This one, definitely not. And the Trolls take a bit of damage from the dragon. And the Blade Dancers just munch through another Troll unit. Look at that, 13 damage. And just sliced them up into tiny... They were basically a fine mist before they hit the ground, the Trolls, I think. And that is just a killer unit that I grossly underestimated. Cuslow is wavered, which is okay because it's holding those knights up for a turn. And you can see both the War Trombones get eaten as well, which is expected there. Turn 4 for the Goblins. So, the Trolls that were being attacked by the dragon, they kill the dragon, finish it off. It was already on 7 damage, so not unexpected there. So, I said I wasn't sure if those other double ones were going to be important. And they were semi-important, at semi-important moments in the game. This one, I think, is the most critical, though. Unit of Blade Dancers up to 12 damage as a result of the Diadem of Dragonkind being toasted on them and the grenade, the Holy Hand Grenade being lobbed at them. 12 damage, double 1. 2 rounds where I was hoping that they would be dead, and now they're alive to try and kill something else. No! Harambe the Bruiser does get in there, and... Oh, it's not Harambe, it's just the regular Bruiser. Harambe goes into the wizard character there and does 1 damage. The regular Bruiser goes in to disrupt the crossbows and succeeds in that task. Spitters back away again and put some more damage onto that infantry unit, up to 10 now. I'll be hoping to kill them before the end of the game. And even though I've got barely any units left, it's still not all over, because I have got units alive, and there are so many enemy units that are close to death. 2 infantry scoring units there. It's looking unlikely that I'll win, but I'm hoping to just cling on to some points for the end of the game now. If I'd killed those blade dancers, the right flank would have actually been looking really healthy at this point. I would have had superiority over there, and I wouldn't have necessarily been feeling confident about winning, but especially if they died at the hands of the trolls, which they really should have done if I'd just done the sensible thing and charged the troll bruiser into them as well and killed them last time. Then I think this flank would actually be looking really good right now. But the left flank is obviously not looking too tasty, but I barely had anything over there to begin with, so we'll see. It's not looking too great at the moment, though. So this flagget is charged by an archfiend. These are closing in on the sniffs, so looking bad for them at the moment. And both flaggets are dead. One of them was on borrowed time anyway, but the other one's also dead now. Bruiser becomes wavered by the crossbows on the countercharge. Cuslow becomes wavered again, by the looks of things. Or actually, no, he gets removed now. That was the wave token from last time. So, dead. And there is the wide shot at the end of that, so it's still not over, but the Bruiser being wavered up there is bad. And if you look at turn 5, these trolls here, let me just go back and move my face out of the way. You can see the trolls at the top right of your screen there, and the blade dancers. They can't see each other over the hill because neither unit is on the hill. So that's a really interesting stalemate now. The blade dancers, which by all rights I'm hoping I should have killed twice already, but they're still alive and they're still a threat, so I can't push the trolls forward without threat of them steaming in and killing me in one go. Again. So that's annoying. So I'm just having to kind of shuffle about a bit and bide my time with those trolls. Harambe turns around to face them to be a bit of a threat, so hopefully they can't just sit there for another turn. And I'll hope to survive the shooting attack that's bound to follow. Then we've got the sniffs here do actually kill the regiment of infantry that were chasing them down, but they're still going to have to deal with that archfiend. Unless, I think I actually got them out of the Archfiend's front charge arc, possibly. But he can still lightning bolt them, so it's not that big of a deal. Turn 5 for the Twiglet kin. So the flame weapons and the fireball, I think it is a fireball on this mage, descend upon Harambe the Bruiser. Look at all that damage. And it looks like, maybe there's another picture coming up there, but the sniffs become wavered as a result of a lightning bolt, which is okay, keeps them alive a bit longer, but not ideal, because I can't dance around anymore. This Bruiser becomes wavered in combat again, so can't contribute to the game too much. Harambe is dead at this point, just the corpse hasn't been removed yet. So turn 6, and it's looking very dire for the goblins at this point. So the trolls just have to move to within range of this objective and accept that they'll be charged by something and hope to just cling to life, because they can't just sit back and hide. Need to get some points. Bruiser just chilling there, waiting to be shot, and the sniffs can't really do much, but they can back up onto that objective, so if they don't die next turn I will at least score a point. And the enemy aren't thrusting all the units towards me now because they're sitting on objectives to get extra points now. Turn 6, and the Twiglets, what do they do here? Well, they move on to objectives more. Charge into the trolls with the blade dancers. Let's see if they can take out yet another unit. And there's going to be a lightning bolt onto the sniffs again. Let's see if it's enough to kill them. And all the shooting in the middle turns around to face that Bruiser. The sniffs die from 7 damage, which is about average. The Bruiser gets killed, finally. And of course the trolls attacked by the blade dancers get up to 16 damage. But I think they were only on 1 damage before, so that's 15 damage dished out from those Blade Dancers. They are insane. So I think they had the Brew of Strength, and I think they were being Bane chanted as well, repeatedly. So that is bad news, and the game ends there because all my units are dead. So, what can I say about that game? It was the one army I wanted to avoid, purely because I don't think my army matched up against it very well. I've struggled against similar lists to this in recent times as well, with whatever army I've been using. I haven't really taken a list that was designed specifically to counter enemy shooting and flyers. I was playing around with that one list with the Critter's Call and the Bigot, and there's a couple of other items as well that can do similar roles of disordering units and that kind of thing. So I think next time I take the goblins out, I will look into something like that. The giants only came into play in this 4th game and obviously didn't do anything because they were just wiped out instantly. So I think dropping one of them, bringing in some more anti-flyer and anti-shooter stuff would definitely be wise at this point level. At lower point levels, I think I found a pretty decent formula for the goblins. It only really falls down reliably every time against an army like this. And you always keep telling yourself, well, it's only a tournament, there's only 4 games in it. Maybe I just won't face an army like that. But if it happens enough, eventually you start taking a list specifically tailored to counter that thing, and then that's the time you don't play any of it. You just face entirely close combat armies, and you've got a couple of units that are just totally wasted in there against it. So I also had the option of taking a list with 4 rock lobbers at this point level, which would have been instead of the 2 giants. And instead of the 2 giants and Cuzlo and Madfall, I could have had 4 rock lobbers and a couple of Moorbeast troops, or maybe 3 Moorbeast troops for chaff. And I think it would have been only 1 game in the tournament where I had rock lobbers. I think in this particular matchup it would have been much more effective than the giants, because 4 rock lobbers I maybe could have even set up to force the enemy to come towards me, because that's scary for anybody really. Of course, it's always possible that the Archfiends with their lightning bolt would have just come into range and just zapped off my rock lobbers immediately. But it would have given the enemy something more to think about differently. I think that would have been more effective here, but against many other lists, the giants would have been fine. So you just never know what you're going to come up against. I think my lists in rounds 1, 2, and 3 were much more well balanced. I think this final list, maybe I went a bit too crazy just throwing the toys in there with the giants and Cuzlo and the extra Flaggit. There was a lot of extra flashy stuff there, but there wasn't a whole lot of substance. The Troll's just a really solid core, and if you just took, at this points level, even if you took 10 Troll Hordes, I think that'd be fine. And then you could just complement that with a sprinkling of characters and war trombones. And I'm not sure how well it'd do in this particular game, but I think that would be needlessly filthy goblin list if you just take maximum troll hordes, because they are probably the most points effective unit in there. They won't absolutely whoop everything, but I think it would have been better than what I had in this particular game for this matchup. What would have been perfect would be if I'd taken what I was talking about with Critter's Call, for example, which could have stopped a really powerful shooting unit for a turn, which is all you need really. Then if I'd had my giants then spread apart more, if I still had them. If I'd taken out Cuzlo, for example, and brought in someone with Critter's Call, stopped the crossbow shooting, had the giants a bit more spread out, and meaning the enemy would have had to go into both of them, rather than just one and shoot the other to hold them up, because they wouldn't have been able to reliably then kill one of them with shooting, so they might not have taken that risk. So, interesting, but as Taraptus, the evil wizard from Dragonstrike, says, failure is made of should-haves. And it's a very, very wise quote that he gives there. If you haven't watched the Dragonstrike VHS from the board game, then you definitely should. See, Dino Titan Edition misses the Andy and Rem show. Well, that's because we haven't really been doing any Age of Sigmar lately, although I did actually have a conversation with Mr. Remington today, and we are looking at getting a game of Age of Sigmar in over the next few weeks at some point, at Warhammer World probably. We just need to pick a day for that. And then a show is more likely to follow that action. I haven't really been following what's going on in the Age of Sigmar at the moment though, just because I haven't been playing it. If someone was to just pop up around here and be willing to play Age of Sigmar a lot, then of course I would. But it's mainly Kings of War people that I've been mingling with lately, and Dead Zone and Dreadball, so it's all the Mantic stuff lately. I'm going to get a bit of Bolt action in soon as well, I'm hoping, so that's going to be good. And because I've been looking forward to playing that again for a while. Let's get to this beautiful image here. Right, I'm going to disappear so you can enjoy this beautiful photoshopped image in all its glory for a minute while I wrap this one up. So all in all, I think my initial 2 lists I think were pretty good, pretty solid, and I came up against armies that I felt the list was going to work against for the most part. My larger list, I wasn't that confident in it from the moment I submitted it, really, because, like I said, I threw in possibly just too many cool, flashy things like giants, when really I should have been thinking about more of a balanced list there. Possibly more units, maybe some spitters or some more beasts, perhaps, and more useful tools rather than just a big, gigantic wall of combat meat, which I certainly had, with the 4 troll hordes, the 2 troll bruisers, the Grog's goons, the 2 giants, Cuzlo is okay, Mincer. That's just a big wall of combat meat, but if you come up against someone that's never going to let you charge them, then you can get a bit stuck. If they can focus fire and kill off a couple of your important units per turn, and then when you get to within range, they've got the combat power to kill multiple units in one round as well, then it's always going to be a bit tricky. But as I was saying in the game as well, there were a few things I could have done differently. The giants were a bit close together. I'm not sure of too many other massive mistakes, but the big one, of course, is not going all in to kill the blade dancers with the troll bruiser, because I should have had that flank. I think it should have been 1 flank, 1 each in the first few turns of that game, but unfortunately my failure to go all in, and I tried to push my luck just too far, and the trolls did not get the job done without the support of the bruiser, and ultimately that led to the blade dancers killing multiple units after that point. So could have got them killed. Alas, it was not to be. Of course, there were a couple of good moments of luck in that game as well, with the double 1s on the bruiser and the flagget in the same turn, but then I think that was kind of cancelled out by the double 1 I then got on the blade dancers the next turn with the shooting attacks that I put on them. So overall, I can't really blame bad luck particularly for it, because it was spread across both sides, I think. It was just a couple of minor decisions, and I think it was not the greatest matchup for me as well. I think it was an enjoyable game, but going into it, I felt like I had less chance of winning than I did in my other games, or as I would have had against most of the other lists that were there on the day as well. It's just, I find those really mobile, fast, while also really shooty lists quite difficult to deal with at the moment, based purely, I think, on the kind of lists that I take. So that's on me as much as it is on anybody else. Right. So in the end, I ended up finishing 5th out of 10 players, by the way. And it's a really interesting phenomenon, though, because the players that I actually went up against finished 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, and I finished 5th. So I only lost to the person who finished 1st. I beat the players that finished 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. Yet I finished 5th, which is interesting. And of course that's based on the fact that most tournaments, it's not just straight up, you won, here's X number of points, you lost, here's X number of points. There are also bonus points for things like how many units you kill, how many objectives you pick up during the game, and so on. So other players were obviously picking up more bonus points than I was in the games that didn't involve me. So even though I defeated those players, they still had enough points to finish ahead of me because my final game, I wasn't able to get that much accomplished. Right, the next tournament, I don't know which one that's going to be because there are a couple approaching. I'm not sure which ones I'm actually going to yet. So you can keep your eyes peeled for that. I've still got my Dreadball tournament report to go up soon, which I haven't done yet from last week. And there's also, I played a game of Warhammer 40,000 as well. And I may do a video on that, even though they barely get any views because no one comes to my channel for that. But we'll see. Right, thanks to everyone who was here throughout for the duration in the chat there. Chatting away, even though some of you were just talking about how much you miss the Age of Sigmar content. Anyone who wants to say anything else before I depart for the evening, you better squeeze those comments out now, because we're about to wrap this up. And don't forget to check out all the various links in the description, the social media shenanigans of my Facebook group and Twitter and so on. And if you love all my video content, don't forget to send me all your money on a monthly basis via any of the methods listed in the description. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe and all that YouTube nonsense. And no last minute questions have popped in, so all that remains to be said, I believe, is good night out there, whatever you are.